Welcome. Today, I have Tracey Gillies from the Evolve CEO joining us on the Business Growth Mindset podcast. Tracey is a wife, mother of three, businesswoman, spiritual medium, and coach. She's also an energy healer, soul alignment, and entity removal expert. After struggling for years from postnatal depression, Epstein Barr glandular fever, adrenal fatigue, anxiety, and overwhelm from the pressures and demands of motherhood and day-to-day life, she started researching natural holistic modalities to try and heal herself. This led to the most intense and enlightened healing and spiritual journey. She now has developed the gifts and skills that allow her to access a person's neurological, psychological, and spiritual frameworks to heal them at a cellular, DNA, and energetic level. Through this process, she's able to heal, balance, and align any blocks and restrictions in a person's mind, body, energy, and soul so that they can unlock optimal mental, physical, emotional, and spiritual health. Tracey and her husband, Greg Gillies, have developed the Evolved CEO Signature Program, specially for CEOs, business owners, and entrepreneurs who want to master their inner health and inner self, awaken their life's purpose, and above all, transform their life. Get comfortable and listen up, because today you'll learn about the power of the soul and how everything is energy. Welcome to another episode of the Business Growth Mindset podcast, series number 3. I'm your host, Christian Lavolsi, and I'm incredibly excited to welcome our guest, my friend, and a former coach of mine, Tracey Gillies, on the show today. Tracey, welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Right, I don't think I've ever seen you this nervous in my entire life. I mean, come on. You have done magic and wonders on me, and you are sitting there nervous. Guys, you all know that I generally have a chat to all our guests a little bit off air, and I couldn't but help Tracey's radiancy when I jumped on the call, and then I quickly turned to, okay, I'm doing this, and we're very privileged because you don't do many podcasts,
No.
and you actually are quite private. And I've always admired that about you. I'm not sure how you maintain such privacy with a husband like Greg. Greg is also a former coach of mine and an awesome bloke, and he will be on the show at some stage. But today we're focusing 100% on Tracey. Tracey, why don't you tell us a little bit about you, where you've come from, and ultimately where you are today?
I feel like there's two stories with that one of who I used to be and who I am now. Yeah. I actually do healing work for people, but when I say healing work, I'm able to access a person's physiological, neurological, and spiritual frameworks. So I do healing at the deepest of levels, and I do this really high reconnection to, the spiritual aspects in a person as well. So you could even call me like a medium because I hear messages, but I use that information to heal people. But I wasn't always this person. So maybe that's where the story kind of is a bit, is really interesting, that I'm mum of 3. Greg and I, we have a very busy lifestyle. We've lived away from family, and, I had children, and I sort of had very high demand, and I actually became quite unwell in myself. And through stress, I think I didn't realise how unwell I had become, but I was always in the end searching for natural ways to heal myself. Again, I sort of went to the doctor and they labelled it depression and a number of things, but I just knew that there was a deeper reason or calling. And so at a point I went on and started studying holistic therapy, and it was advanced holistic kinesiology. So that's kind of the start of my journey. But in doing that, it's like, sometimes I say it's like opening Pandora's box, but I opened up this whole world that I didn't even know existed. And I didn't even know that I sort of had these spiritual gifts that I had never awakened in myself. Because you can actually go and learn things, but some things can't be taught. And one of my biggest gifts and skill sets are actually to do with negative entities and negative energy removal for people, also for people's properties and things like that. But through this journey, it was like an awakening journey. It's like I found my calling So the old Tracey used to be a very different person, and now I actually do this work. But Greg and I, he's had his own journey, as you know. And we work together to sort of, help heal clients on all, aspects of their life. He does a lot of business coaching as well, but we've combined it into like a combined program together. So
I love the way. Oh, are we getting feedback there? Can you hear that?
No, I can't.
Oh, I wonder where that's come. Oh, it's gone. For our listeners, I took part in the Evolved CEO program. Interestingly enough, I actually met Greg. We were working with Jimmy out of the US. It feels like so long ago, and then as I got to know Greg, I really, really connected with Greg, and then he introduced me to this amazing soul, Tracey, and as part of and maybe I'll get you to talk about the Evolved CEO program rather than me, because I believe it's probably evolved since I took part a couple of years back. And for me, it was, I'd already done a lot of work in this area, as we recall, but for me, it was a little transformation because, and I say little because any transformation with me is actually quite big. So, it was really about just understanding what I needed to do to really take that next level. And I spent a fair bit of time with Greg, but then I actually went deep with you for, over a year at least, beyond the program. And it was life-changing. It was really life-changing. So why don't you, just so everyone doesn't think, what in the hell are these two going on about? Why don't you talk a little bit about the Evolved CEO program that you and Greg work in, but also then, maybe even sharing some of the things that we did together that gives people, and I'm happy for you to share some of those things with my audience, if you feel it's appropriate. So, Tracey, explain the Evolved CEO.
We both have different skill sets and gifts, and so we've created a program where we would work with a person holistically. And, we have a lot of really high-end clients that come, successful business, leaders in their own right. But again, we see a lot of people with these amazing lives on paper, like everything looks fabulous, but yet just maybe something else is missing, or maybe these areas of their life, a lot of people really focus hard on business, and yet then sort of, personal or family life or these other areas almost kind of don't get the attention they need. And so it's actually, I guess it would be like elevating people's consciousness and taking them to that next level to really step into that sort of, that unlimited or untapped potential. But in knowing about how, creation or manifestation works, it's actually through the healing process that we really realign ourselves and then are able to, step into that place of more potential in all areas of life. So again, when I talk about healing, Greg does different things to me. So he does sometimes I don't even know how to explain what he does, again, even trying to explain what I do, but he does things where he will look at clearing people's influences in their life, like mum, dad, all of those things, because relationships they hold, they can hold past trauma, or, you create a lot of negative belief systems, but realistically it's about that belief within you. So again, it's about releasing the past so you can change that future path for yourself. So he works with clients face to face like that. He also then takes them through a journey where then he would look at their business, and he does a lot of business work. But again, he'll always say people don't have business problems, they have personal problems that reflect in their business. So again, if you want to change any area of your life, you've got to do that internal healing work. And then what I do, again, it's like, where do I start? There's millions of things I could do for a person. Because I can work on all levels, mind, body, and soul, there is literally so many areas. So when I say, I actually work through something which called energetic surrogacy, which is I've got the ability to tap into someone's energy at a higher level, and I can bring their energy into my body. And I work through myself almost like a clear channel. And it allows me to even look at structural things like physical organs and glands, neural networks and pathways. Again, brain structures can hold a lot of stress, past trauma, but sort of we've got these beliefs, subconscious beliefs and programs running. We don't even realize we're running all these things, and yet we're creating more of what we really don't want for ourselves. So it's about looking at all those things, but then at the level of the spiritual, the soul, there can just be so much, so many restrictions, even things like past life restrictions. Maybe we're sort of not fully connected, or maybe there's new guidance to come in, or there's guidance that are running programs that aren't serving you. Sometimes I find it hard to say what I do, because and what I love about it though is that everybody's different. So it's like a customized healing program. It's not one size fits all. Whatever somebody needs me to do for them is I will actually do that for them, to heal them, to realign them so they can step into more of what they're wanting in their life.
Yeah, look, I think that was a really good quick synopsis in fairness of what you do, but you do much more than that. I mean, I think for me, and I think we'll talk a little bit from my perspective, which I think will give people relativity. I've always had something that was always holding me back, and I didn't know what it was. And that's why I thought, you know what, I'm spiritual. We know that I have a very high energy vibration, and I work, all my clients know that I work incredibly intensely at pretty much everything I do. And it's a level of intensity that, has become, as my team says, a core competency of what I do. And I think what that is that we also give out a lot of energy, but there's never a lot left for Christian. And you get quite exhausted. So, and you experience the same thing. For me, working with you guys was, Greg allowed me to come in a safe space where I could actually just let go of some of the past. And for me, a lot of my past, there's no secret. My audiences know that. I grew up in quite an abusive household, and I was never enough. And for me, I've seen lots of psychologists. I've seen psychiatrists as a youngster, and psychologists later in my life. But there was just something that never got quite unlocked. And with Greg, I was able to free that up. But where the real quality came for me was in the time that we spent together every month, working through, letting you channel in. Because I learned a whole bunch of shit about myself I knew, but I could never confirm. And I think that's your special gift. This is different, right? And I remember what I said to you. I'll try anything once. Do you know what I mean? Like it's kind of like, why wouldn't you? And this is something that really did. It opened up my mind. It allowed me to meditate a lot better. It gave me real clear focus on what I needed to do physically to get better. And you haven't seen me in a while. I'm like 20% smaller. I'm healthier. And these are all the things that I had to put into place that Tracey every month would say to me, hey, Christian, I'm picking this up. I'm doing this. And you know what? I would sit there stubbornly. And I remember you telling me off, and I was like, come on, you need to do this. Right. And eventually I did. And sometimes someone like me has to learn the hard way. But that's, I think, your gift, Tracey, that you're able to really give people a sense of clarity about what's going on. There's the unspoken stuff, the stuff that, you need a gift to be able to tell someone, that ability for you to channel in energetically. And, never once did I feel like, it was hooky, spooky and weird. And I think that's really important for people to understand. There's a level of trust that we have to have if we want to create transformations and change, particularly in ourselves. And, that's the one thing that I really got from you, was having that peace to know that, hey, this is a safe space for me to do something. And it's non-evasive. I think that's also really important for people to understand. Having just come back from Ireland and hearing stories about Tony Quinn and the work that he does with Life Force. So that's the energy that we have within us. That kind of blew me away. But the good thing is I could relate to some of that because I'd already worked with you on understanding more of that. And and for you, for me, it's always I'm quite religious. I've got a very strong spiritual connection with the land, with country. Those things are all really important to me. And I think that's the message to our listeners is, Tracey and Greg actually do some work that is impacting a lot of people's lives. I know that you guys are having some tremendous success as the business has evolved, right? But more importantly, it's the personal relationship that you guys have got and the family. And that's what I love. That's what I want to talk about, is the fact that you guys are so busy, but you still have time, no matter how crazy it gets. So
I think sometimes the people that do a lot of the spiritual work, it makes it look a little bit unattainable for people in the day-to-day. And, like even you've kind of got information, Joe Dispenza and meditation and stuff like that, and it's about being able to go to those states to kind of access these higher vibrational states. That's what I would do for people, but I would actually physically heal them, because it's about releasing all of those things that are kind of keeping you out of holding higher vibrational states. But again, and that's expanding consciousness and elevating ourselves. And when we're kind of vibrating at a higher frequency rate, that's being in flow state. We start to manifest more of what we truly want. We start to kind of create the life that that's more in alignment to us as well. But again, it's like we're always kind of in our own way. It's always about internal stuff, or like my restrictions or my connection to myself. And again, a lot of people, they sort of wonder why they're not really that fulfilled or happy or what they want, creating that. But again, it comes back to kind of doing that healing work, which a lot of people, I don't think they realize that it's about that. That's the key thing to be doing. But again, I kind of digress. Greg and I work with a lot of really busy people, and we can still kind of show them, help them heal, but also kind of talk to them about these ideas or concepts and fit it into a busy life, because the world, it's just got busier and busier, especially now that people are a bit more separate. You've got your family, you've got all your current demands, and it's hard to fit all those elements into life. And being busy and doing all this work, it actually can then make people sort of end up being more disconnected with themselves. So, it's kind of that balancing act, but it's also doing this work for people. But I understand that kind of business realm, not that I kind of am in the business sense that Greg is, but again, we work with people that our lives are full as well and busy, and we're kind of, working hard with business and all of that stuff. So I kind of get it as well.
Yeah, no, it really is amazing work, and it is hard to explain when you have to explain it. And look, we all struggle to tell people what we really do, because we're all so talented, and it's just so hard to tell everyone how we're talented. I love saying that line anyway. But look, Tracey, thank you for sharing that. I want to ask you something. What's the biggest challenge that you're facing in your role right now, and how are you tackling that?
The biggest challenge in my role would be sort of what we talked about before, kind of stepping out from that one-to-one, like, the way I've worked with you. Greg does a lot of talking and speaking, and at the start of this year, we started doing retreats, and he's quite good at pushing me out of my comfort zone.
He's good at that, isn't he?
Play it a bit smaller than what I could, but I'm actually in the process at the moment of the entity side of things that I do are skills that can't be taught because they're soul gifts, and I didn't think I'd ever teach anything, but I've actually been asked to teach a few times by physical people, but I always declined, and now I've had someone come through that then when I did the work for them, a message from kind of higher spirit that I am directed by, to create a program to teach. So again, whenever we expand ourselves, this well, some of those little self-doubts creep in. Am I good enough? Can I do it? All of these things. And again, it's just me getting out of my own way. So I guess I'm just always, what I teach people and help, heal people, I'm always kind of doing that for myself, especially I always want to go for more. I always know there's more. I always know when there's more to step into, or I'm playing it small. But again, doesn't mean I come up again and again against that same place in myself, that I've got to kind of look at it and go, what's it really about, or push through it. But it's the uncomfortable, right? Because it's the unknown.
Yeah. And
look, for me at the moment.
Yeah, and I've always got a saying, you got to be prepared to become comfortable with being uncomfortable. If you want to expand and you want to grow, that is the secret. You've got to be prepared to become comfortable with uncomfortable. You've got to step into it, as Brene Brown says. You got to step into the arena. You got to be prepared to be vulnerable and be brave. And so many people so many people I meet have such closed minds to anything. Like, my son is a really good example when it comes to food. He just refuses to eat 90% of food. And it's like, Leonardo, you need to broaden your mind. Whereas my daughter, she'll eat anything. She will try something once. And if she doesn't like it, about it straight away.
Yeah.
But she will have a go. And it's incredible how, Lucy and I say it all the time, we have two beautiful children that are both so different.
Yeah.
Right? And yet they're best buddies. They get along, and then out of nowhere they'll start arguing, kids do.
Yeah.
Then there's tears and fireworks, and then you tell them off, and the next minute they're back just being buddies. And Leo this morning was sitting on the beanbag reading to Lavender, and I thought, oh my God, that is the cutest thing I've ever seen in my entire life. Leo's only 7 and Lavender's 4, so Lavender doesn't know how to read yet. But there's Leo just reading a comic book to her because he's into comics, and I just thought, man, that's what living is. And but looking at them is how I then say, how do we expand their level of thinking? How do we give them the confidence? You talked about imposter syndrome. You didn't use the word, but that's what it is. It's imposter syndrome. When we need to step out, we need to have courage. Someone, one of my team was saying, "Oh, so what are you going to talk about with Tracey?" I said, "Exactly what Tracey does." She's like, "You're not worried about people saying, 'What in the hell have you been up to, Christian?'" I'm like, man, it doesn't change the advice that I give to people, right, in terms of what I do. That's about me and how I'm healing and how I'm working through my challenges. But I think what it does is it encourages people to step out of their comfort zone. In the same way, that I always tell people, I'm a Christian, not by name, but also by faith. It doesn't stop me from working with other people who have different beliefs. And that's the thing that I challenge my audience to is you got to be prepared to think outside the square.
Yeah.
Right?
But you talked about imposter syndrome. I would take that a step further as in going, don't do the comparison to other people. Because as soon as you start looking at what other people are doing and, oh, my God, social media is so good for that, you start to just and then it kind of deters me from my path. So it's like if I kind of have that higher purpose in what I'm doing, I'm just focused on what I'm creating for myself because, oh, my goodness. And same as talking about kids before, that's another big thing is teaching them how to live in this world with all this noise and all of those things around, but still kind of be true to yourself and follow that directive within. Yeah.
Absolutely. And I think you just summed it up beautifully. I mean, it's about purpose, right? Like, why you exist. And I think that's so powerful, right? And I know why I exist. When I came to you guys, I already knew why I existed. That was the easy part. I remember, one of our first conversation, like, I don't know if I can work with you. Do you remember that? You're like, your energy vibration is too high. It's ridiculous, right? And the thing is, even you stepped into it. Do you know what I mean? So, and then, I think subsequently we had more chats as the year went on, and you're like, oh my gosh, Christian, I'm getting more people that have got higher energy vibrations.
I work with a lot more people now with those kind of gifts. And again, like me doing this work, I haven't just suddenly learned it and it's been a progression, and I've had to develop myself and my skills and my abilities to hold people's energy. So the higher that I can hold, the higher that I attract these people with gifts. But what I love is what me and Greg are passionate about is working with more people that actually can impact and make a bigger difference in the world. And a lot of people, it is about maybe they're just a little bit off track in themselves and they have this wonderful life and they might have, even monetary wise, they've got more than enough, but they're quite stuck in themselves. And so then you sort of do that unfolding healing process. And once we really heal ourselves, we kind of step into this place now that we want to be of service to the world and we've got so much more to give. And so I want to work with people that have kind of more ability or influence to influence at a higher level, because then it's that ripple effect. And, the world needs more good people and more good leaders, really conscious leaders to be developed now. So
I think that what you said there is, and this is, and I agree with everything. The world needs more good people, more leaders. I take that a step further, because obviously in my line of work, it's taking people from good to great, right? Using Jim Collins's famous book, Good to Great. The reality of it is, it's all about that. We live in a world that is so connected, but also so dysfunctional. Mm. And, I'm a big believer that we are all energy, right? If I say to people who sometimes say to me, Christian, you're into all this stuff. And I'm like, hey, I got aromatherapy burning. I've got my, incense candles. I sit there and I work, with a guru, to meditate with. I do it all. And do you know why? Because it makes me grounded. It brings me, because of my high energy vibration, if I don't ground, I burn out. And so I always say, and I still see a physiotherapist. I also see a chiropractor. Those two professions dislike each other fundamentally. So the reality of it is, it's what serves you. And this is what I say to people. It's what I say to my clients. I never impose any of my beliefs on my clients. That's not my job. But what I do is I bring my values to the table. My values are to see, seek, and think differently, right? Because if you want to go from good to great, right, first you've got to get to good. But to get to great, there's not that many people that get to great. And I mean, surely we should, I think this is a conversation we used to have all the time, surely no one aspires to be average. I as a kid aspired to just pass, because I thought that I was stupid. I thought that I was incapable, because that's what I was told. And one of the things that I did working with you and Greg was I broke those self-limiting beliefs. Yeah. By going back and saying, hang on a minute, I am enough. And a lot of people think, Christian, you've got this personality. You've got all these superstar clients. You're working with $100 million companies. Yes. I didn't just start there. It's part of the journey. It's the journey I'm on. And that's what I love about the conversation we're having. We're really showing an audience that it's a journey for all of us, no matter at what level we are in our professions. I think the day you stop learning, you're effectively dead. That's my theory on it. And, and to be able to learn, you've got to explore. If I could hike, I'd be at base camp. I'd be going in the Tibetan monks to try and just understand, see if I can have a greater connection. But the reality is, you don't have to be in Tibet to do that. No. You do it from the comfort of your own home, right? And or in your case, you can be at home and someone else is doing it for you, right? So, but the truth is, this is about exploring, right, who we are. And that's what I truly loved about connecting with you guys. Now, I'm going to ask you a different question now. This is the one, my favorite question. I stole it from another podcast. Everybody knows that. What should I ask you, Tracey, that I don't know enough to ask?
Oh, my goodness.
That's my favorite question. I love it.
What should you ask me that you don't know enough to ask?
To ask. Yeah.
Oh, geez.
It's really the secret squirrel stuff.
Secret squirrel stuff. Oh, I don't know, because sometimes I think I'm a bit of an open book. I would tell anything and I'm quite open, but then
I have to say that is very true.
Yeah, but then there's a lot of things that people wouldn't know, and sometimes, like you said, I can be a bit private. I think that's the thing that me and Greg talk about a lot. He's so good at talking, and he's like, all the stuff I know and that I do and that, all of these things, he's like, I need to talk more and I need to kind of, I don't know, how you sort of sometimes put that controversial spin on some information that's out there, and it's like, look, there's actually another way to look at it, or I know a higher level information. But it's just being comfortable in self to kind of start, I don't know, pushing it a little bit, because you get that bit of feedback maybe that's not so positive, but then again, sometimes people say it's, what am I trying to say? How like any kind of feedback's good, especially if it's in marketing and that. I don't know. I do like to put myself out there and sort of say these things, but I think some of the things I talk about are really concepts or ideas that are just people have not even really thought about a lot of this stuff. And we were talking before about, the problem is everybody's so focused on the external world and it's become so over energy. And the place that I connect into is, it's called many names, but maybe innate intelligence. And we all have this inner guidance and it knows exactly what we need. And so maybe stop listening to all the gurus as much or all these other information. It's like if I start listening to myself. Like even when we talk about it, people say to me, I want to be more intuitive. And I go, you're listening to your body. We push through and people think they're superhuman and we put so many demands on us. Like even before saying I want to be all these things and go for more, and I'm always kind of creating and doing, and Greg and I are really busy. At the same time, I have to kind of honour that space to go, I can't keep functioning sometimes at those levels because it's not sustainable. And if I fall out of balance in my physical body and I'm tired and I'm exhausted, then I kind of fall out of balance in lots of areas. So it's like this dance. I didn't even answer your question, did I? I just
no, not really. But I think what you did is you danced around it enough that it gave people a different perspective, and I loved it. That's fine. You're not the first person on the podcast that's done that. But here, now I'm gonna throw you an easy one. Tell me about a customer that touched your heart. And tell me about a customer that changed your business.
Oh, wow. Touched my heart. I don't even know if one comes to mind. I love it because it's all so different. And everybody kind of has a different story. And I never know what I'm going to do until I do work for them, which I love.
That's a good answer, by the way.
Okay, because I can't even name one. I feel like
it's less about naming them. It's more, you did exactly what I was hoping.
Okay.
So in that case then, what's your biggest failure? And what did you learn? What did you learn from that experience?
Oh, God.
You know me, I love talking about failure a lot. So I always ask that question. So, what's your biggest failure and what did you learn from that experience, more importantly?
Oh, because I feel like I'm not going to talk about one failure. I feel like I'm going to talk about most of my life. But then that feels sad to me because then I feel like I'm kind of saying that, again, that path through that struggle and through that hardship was what created me now. And I never would be even doing half the things I am doing now or the gifts and skills I have if I hadn't have had that journey. Maybe the biggest failure would have been, I don't know. It's hard because growing up wasn't even taught to even address or talk about feelings, right? So then you've got this life of suppression going. Then I wasn't very good to myself physically. I used to drink a lot and I just kind of again, I wasn't really looking after myself. Then you compound that into having babies. Pregnancy is hard on the body. Then you compound it into a life of stress. Greg worked away a lot. So I don't know. Maybe it was just not having the skills to have tuned into myself or know that. But then again, that's kind of being silly too because I didn't have the information. I didn't know what I know now, so I kind of just did what I did, right? But I've had many failures. I think the one thing I've always been proud of myself for is not stopping failing, and just giving it a go. But then in saying that, Greg's always been a good one for pushing me because there's times I would have just taken a back seat.
Your husband will never let you take a back seat.
Oh, sometimes I have to rein him back and get back here, Mr. Greg. He's very good at kind of pushing the limits and just kind of not taking that no, even within himself. Or, he's always just kind of stretched himself, which I do love. So I don't know. I've had many failures, but I've also through the failures done many great things. And if I hadn't stepped into that zone of possible failure, I wouldn't have done anything.
I think what you've just said is actually really powerful because what you've said is what most people go through and never step out of. Yeah. So, they get into that, they're never kind to themselves. They feel inferior. They're not enough. They don't feel love. Then they get married or they experience the next things and then they drink or people do drugs and then they feel more guilt and all of these things keep compounding and compounding. And, I know that, for example, actually, I don't know if you have, but I know Greg's completely does not drink. gave up alcohol,
Yeah.
really be clear and focused. I don't know. Are you in the same? You don't
No,
drink?
I drink occasionally, but I
Okay.
used to be a big drinker, but I don't drink so much
Yeah.
now. Yeah.
But Greg, I remember because Greg was going through that at the time when I was working with. He's like, nah, that's it. I'm not drinking anymore. And for him, it served him really, really well. I know lots of people, lots of high performing people who have now absolutely given up drinking.
Yeah.
And, you know, I remember Greg once saying to me, well after we'd worked, he goes, you love posting all these pictures of cigar smoking Christian and wine drinking, whiskey drinking. I'm like, yeah. I said, because I love it, but I drink once a week. Right? And he was like, really? I'm like, that's it. I only drink once a week. I drink on weekends and purely social. Not because I need it socially. It's because that's the only time I actually want to drink. Like otherwise I won't drink.
Yeah.
You know? And I was explaining that was, you know, for a person who grew up in the food and wine and whiskey in that whole hospitality industry. You know, I've gone 10 months without drinking. I think when we were working together, I stopped drinking for 9 months, and everyone was like, "What are you doing?" And I'm like, "That's willpower. I can stop whenever I want." And I think that's the key, right? The key is that you've got to be in control. And by in control, I don't mean like a control freak. You need to have the ability to reflect on where you are and take control. And I think what you highlighted very well is that, you know, failure is not a bad thing. Failure is a great thing if you're learning, you know. You know, and to me, I remember when I got heavily criticized for being the professor of failure at university, and smart asses who knew very little. And now, that was 4 years ago. Now I get paid a bucket load of money to give keynotes on failure. And it's like, hello, right? And, you know, failure has never been a buzzword. It is. It's like entrepreneurship now.
Oh,
You know?
I know, because I kind of see a lot of people as they get older, not saying the people we work with, but I guess just relating it to what I've seen, is that kind of defeatism as people get older.
Yeah.
And then they kind of go, I'm a bit too old to even take risks or those kind of things. And I just think, oh, I hope I never stop. And I hope I never stop learning. And I hope there's always more. And I'm actually more excited now about where Greg and I are at right now and where we're going to be in the next couple of years, because I know it's going to shift and change. But I can see how people get stuck in the comfort of just kind of where they're at, and they just get scared of that risk. They don't want to take it. So then you stay. But then comfort's nice for a while, but when you stay too long in that place, it becomes something else, and that's not great.
Yeah, you know, I feel your energy as we're talking, and I love it because it's funny. It's like our worlds knew that we were going to be on the call. Before jumping on, because I've got to run out of the house after this, I sat down and I said, I'm going to jump in the shower and I'm going to get ready. And in that moment, I was getting ready and I'm like sitting there going, wow, when my daughter is 18, I'm going to be like 58 years old, right? Like I stood there, I was like, wow. And then I was like, man, I've got to work really hard in the next 16 years to be super cool. Like that's my brain. That's when my brain goes. Whereas most people, like you said, they go, oh, I haven't done enough. Like I say I haven't done enough in life. And people look at me and they go, are you insane? You've lived like the life of 50 people. I'm like, no way.
I'm sorry to break it to you, but you are going to be uncool in your daughter's eyes no matter what you do. Georgie even says to me and Greg that we're boomers or something. And I'm like, I'm not of that generation. I am not. And I'm not that old. And I'm not that uncool. But she seems to think we are. So
look, I think I still live a life of delusion when it comes to that. But, you know, and it's interesting because I had this flash before my eyes of what I was going to do, because obviously I've got a BHAG and I'm very driven. And, you know, I sat there and I thought, I can still be cool. Like I can still be transformational, changing people's lives. My kids may not relate to that, but, you know, we're doing a lot of work with underprivileged kids and I'm loving that work that I do, you know, from a corporate social responsibility. And I also working, you know, all the time with people who can't afford my services. And, you know, I've transformed people's lives. I love that. And that's about the ability of giving back. But, you know, my kids, they'll always sit there. Like my son rips out the other day, you know, Pa, I know that you want me to, you know, to be an engineer or to be, you know, a doctor or all these things. And I look at him and I'm like, mate, you just be whatever you want. And he goes, excellent. I just want to be an entrepreneur like you. And I'm like, of all things, you really want to follow my footsteps. But the truth is, I'm super proud of that because it's his divergent thinking. That's what I love. The fact that he's prepared to think. And and my son is a lot shyer than my daughter, So to me, it goes back to that point. You can make choices in life. We all have free will. You can either have a choice to be a victim or you can have a choice to be a victor, right? And I think that's the wonderful thing that you and Greg do in your Evolved CEO program, and you certainly had impact in my life, is that no matter where you are on that journey, you can help someone unpack even the one or two things. And I think that's really important because we didn't really touch that at the beginning, but I think that's what's really clear to me is the one thing is it doesn't matter where you are. If you are in business and you're stuck, say, here, and someone like me who's in business up here and I was stuck here, the ability to unleash, everybody has. It's just whether or not you believe in yourself enough to allow the people that you bring into your world to give you that energy and that influence to create that transformation. Because it's rarely about change. Right? This is what I love saying to people. It's rarely about change. It's all about transformation, right? And that means that you've got to give to be transformative. Tracey, if I see we're talking about age, if you could turn back the time and talk to your 18-year-old self, what advice would you give her?
I think it would just be not to be so afraid. And it's like, don't let your limitations define you because they're all changeable.
That's great advice. I love that. All right. So in that case, then, what's the most important thing that you've learned in this life? What was your life like before learning it? And I mean, actually, let's just answer that first part of that question. So what's the most important thing that you've learned in your life?
It would be that everything is energy, and to actually start looking and realizing that I'm this multidimensional being and that there's so much more than just this physical realm. And imagine having worked on that years ago or understanding that it even exists. Like I even think now what I know a lot. It's all very exciting. I get so excited I could talk about it for ages. But I just think, wow, there's so much that I don't know. Like those kind of all of that stuff, it's untapped. It's just unlimited. It's just, So again, I wish I had been given that doorway even through younger years to even expand into those concepts and ideas and start to look at life differently.
So knowing what you know now, what is the one thing, the one piece of advice that you would, knowing what you know and knowing that energy is everything, what's the one bit of advice you give people to get them started on this journey? So the people that are listening, my audience that may not be, that may be actually unsure and are listening and going, okay, well, where do I start, Tracey? Where do I actually start?
You would want to tune into your energy, and even things like emotions are just energy and motion. A lot of people like to push away the negative stuff and the hard stuff. It just feels hard and yucky and we don't want to deal with it. But transformation is going through those places. They're like messengers calling us into action, or they hold information. And if I can hear the story or the information, I can transform it. Maybe I could even make a different choice. Even things like exhaustion, or I'm tired, my body's tired, exhaustion's trying to tell me something. Again, I just think we all want this instant gratification. We all want life to be great, but life isn't always like that. And most of our lessons come through that hardship and that negative. So it's kind of I don't even want to say that typical thing people would say, embracing those hardships. It's more about the more I get to know my energy and I tune into myself, I kind of hear this deeper knowing or this deeper voice. And the more that I keep listening to it and following it, I'm kind of given more and more. And I think for me in my journey, that's how I expanded myself so much. I felt like I would call it following like breadcrumbs, like Hansel and Gretel. I'd kind of pick up one piece and then I'd sort of step into another, but it was that intuitive voice that I started to listen to, because before it was I couldn't even hear it, you see. And the more I listened, the more I kind of got shown and told. And it really just helped me to kind of expand myself, or, that gut feeling or that kind of trust of what path to take. And deep down, if we kind of really listen in, we're told, we know. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Fast 5 and 5, right? Like we're almost at the end of this, and I'm looking forward there. So for the listeners that are new, I love to do 5 questions really fast and not give our guests any time to think or contemplate. So they're not tricky, so they're all good. Okay, maybe one is tricky. But Tracey, what makes you feel inspired?
Oh, seeing people's growth journeys and seeing change and transformation that I help them to facilitate.
Mm-hmm. Wonderful. What is the best compliment that you have ever received?
I liked it when people say they really love my energy, because I work so hard on it. And so for me, that's one of the biggest compliments you could get.
Yeah, awesome. And if you could be remembered for one thing, what would it be?
I think it's about what I'm about to create in the space of negative entities and creating a program and the truth around it and showing people the right and safe way to healers to use it.
Okay, amazing. Best book recommendation?
What was that?
Best book recommendation.
Oh, best book recommendation.
Maybe a book for people to get their head in.
Oh, what's that woman's name? It's called The Gift, and it was a lady that's a survivor of the Holocaust, and she actually went in to do, is it psychology? And she's about 98 and still does a lot of stuff for vets with PTSD and things like that. But it's kind of her story about the Holocaust. I love all that kind of that time frame as well, and then it's about coming out of it and how to kind of move through trauma, I guess. Then she's got another book called The Present that's after that. I really liked those.
Okay, excellent. And if you could have a billboard with anything on it, what would it be and why? This is the question that gets everyone.
I don't know. What is it, like my face? Am I saying something? Am I doing something on it?
It's up to you. If you had a billboard, right, with anything on it, what would it?
I would just have a real beautiful scenery of like some beautiful nature kind of, I don't know, like looking at how beautiful the earth is, but in a place like, a big city that everything's drummed out and we've kind of gone too far. So, yeah.
Amazing. Tracey, I have absolutely loved hanging out with you. It's just like, it's because we haven't spoken for so long. I reckon it was probably the beginning of the year in terms of in person. And, it's really interesting. You do have just a beautiful energy about you. Your love for what you do is the singular biggest strength you have. And I've always said it, like, you are purpose driven. And, obviously I do everything about purpose in my life. And I love that. I wanted to just, I took a note before, the biggest mistake people make, and this is the beauty about everything you've shared with us today, is that, Napoleon Hill wrote a book called Think and Grow Rich. And interestingly enough, the reason why Napoleon Hill put the word think first was because you can't do it, you can't grow unless you think first. And, everyone thinks that book is all about making money. It's actually all about people. It's about you as an individual growing and expanding, right? But it all begins with disciplined thought. And you gave a really good bit of advice when I said to you, where do people start? And essentially, ladies and gentlemen, where you start is where you can find a quiet spot and just tune into yourself. We live very busy lives, really busy lives. And that's what you and Greg are able to do, is get people out of that environment for an hour, 2 hours, whatever it takes, and just get people to go, hey, you can sit still, right? You don't need a fucking device. Well, my first swear word. You don't need a device. Whoops. You don't need a device in your hand 24 hours a day. And, Lucy will say, oh, but Christian, you've got a device in your hand 24 hours a day. but I also know how to turn off. Do you know what I mean? That's really important. Like if I have 15 minutes at my desk in my office where I've got a gap, I'll stop. I'll ground. I think first and I act second. And I think that people that have got a very high energy, but also people that work at pace need to learn how to slow down. But slowing down doesn't mean stopping in its entirety. One of the things that I've learned is that you can stop while actually walking. You know, like you can stop your brain. Like I've learned to meditate now while I'm on a walk. And when I first learned that technique, I was like, how am I going to do this? You know, my own self-limiting beliefs, like, how do you meditate while walking? I've got to concentrate. Left, right, left. That's hard enough for me. But all of a sudden, I can go for a 30-minute walk and come back completely clear, you know, and not bring music with me, listen to birds in the morning and just go, you know, and I don't do that enough, right? But, you know, you used to drum into me, hey, Christian, you need to get this amount of activity in you, your body's saying this. I've done it, right? And so I think the key message today is, you know, you've got to be brave, you've got to expand yourself, but you've got to think first and then act, you know, and give yourself the time, right? Give yourself the time and give yourself the love that you need to be able to step out of whatever adversity or whatever agitation you've been through, because it doesn't matter whether and I love that story. I'm going to go and get the book, The Gift, because, you know, there's someone who's been through tremendous and extraordinary adversity, you know, extraordinary. There is nothing that I could say that would remotely be able to justify, or not justify is the wrong word, comprehend what someone went through that lived through that period. And yet they're making impact in people's lives. Yeah. And they're doing it, as you said, in their 90s, right? So Tracey, thank you so much. You know, any last minute thoughts from you, Tracey, before I wrap up today's episode?
When you said about what can people do, and I talked about emotions, the other thing was what you said about giving yourself a break from your mind, because too many thoughts and too much going on, it pushes us into sort of stress, and then that pushes our body into a stress state. And a lot of people just hardly sit in any silence in a day. They really don't. And again, sleeping at night's not enough to kind of catch up on yourself or heal. So again, even looking at my life, like I have a nice time in the morning, but then I get busy with kids, lunches, I've got work all day. I can go through the whole day and I kind of haven't stopped, and that's not healthy. So, you know, I do this work and yet I get busy. So I have to make sure I cultivate those times for myself, where even if it's just some downtime for my mind, you know, again, I'm not looking at my phone, I'm not looking at a screen. It's honestly taking responsibility for yourself and what you're wanting to create, because you're the only one that can create it for yourself. Yeah.
Yeah, no, look, amazing. And Tracey, it's been an absolute pleasure. And I mean, an absolute pleasure having you on the show. So thank you. And I want to take this time to thank all of our listeners. We value you. And I know that there are hundreds of thousands of other podcasts out there. And yet some of you are so loyal in so many parts of the world. I think we were number 23 in Nigeria, right? Oh. We have been for a while, and it's mind blowing. You know, the reach. South Africa. I got the list yesterday, and I was like, how are we in the top 100 podcasts in these countries? And you know what? That just tells me that you can serve anyone anywhere in the world right now. You've just got to be brave enough to step out. And you know, we all have skills. You know, don't just look at Tracey and go, oh my God, look at the gifts she has. I want to be like Tracey. You have skills. You have gifts. You've got to learn what the universe and the world needs you to serve. You know, and you know, some people always say to me, Christian, you know what you want. It took me 35 years to work out what I wanted. Right? You're just saying the last 8, 9, 10 years. You know, and so. That's so important. And so, you know, I want to just thank everyone out there that takes the time to listen to our podcast. And what I want you all to do is I want you all to connect with Tracey Gillies. It's going to be in the show notes. We're going to put her LinkedIn URL. Greg and Tracey are very active LinkedIn people. but more importantly, they're very active on social. They share some really good content. I know Greg really is into giving value without even having to pay for it. You absolutely, and both of you have really good content that people can learn from, even just for 2 minutes. And I think that that's wonderful. I also want to thank my team who allow me to do all the stuff that I do and then put this all together. And if you're new, hit that subscribe button, hit the notification setting, and change it, because the algorithms want you to see everything but my show, right? And I don't want you to miss out on it. I mean, surely you'd love to be here with me and Tracey and all of our wonderful guests. And I want you all to big round of applause for Tracey. Thank you. And until next time, live with purpose.